All right, so I would like to show you a new project that I've been working on. It is called Code Red, and this project aims to teach kids how to be software engineers. So there is a lot of interesting stuff out there that helps teach kids how to be programmers or how to code, and I think all of those resources are great, and kids should do those. The block coding, the roadblocks, the way that kids can kind of really get into learning what a conditional is and learning loops, things like that. I think those are great introductions. But I wanted to take things a step farther and make it a little more fun to learn what it's like to actually be a software engineer. So, in the real world, when you become a software engineer, there is a lot more to do than just writing code. That's a good first step, and you need to be able to do that. But you also need to be good with people. You have to work with a team. You have to work with product who has requirements for you. You have to write tests for your code. You have to write documentation for your code. You have to code review other people's code. So there's a lot more involved than just writing that initial piece of code. There's also bug fixing involved. And so I wanted to build a game within a game, or making a game within a game. Hard to explain. I'm going to show you here. But basically, what you're going to do with Code Red is kids will be able to work together in real time. They will be able to play different games, but not by playing them with the keyboard and mouse or anything like that. They'll play it by writing code, and they'll do it together. So each person will be given a part of the game to write, and then they'll write that together and actually run that. And the cool part about this is going to use a game engine, so if they write the code wrong, they will actually get to see what happens. They won't just say, "Oh, there's an error." Sometimes it will, but it will actually, if you have a logic problem, you'll actually see those issues. So I want to take a minute and show you here what this game might look like. And so I want to start with some of my wireframes that we're taking a look at. So these are really rough wireframes that just go over what it might be like to actually have this game. So one of the first things that you'll need to do is have a lobby where you can either create or join a new game. Since this is going to be a real-time thing, you'll either have a code. You can imagine a classroom setting where maybe a teacher has a bunch of codes that they're giving out, and so you break up in groups of 4, or if this is just an online thing, you go in, you say, "I'm creating a game," you get a code, and then you can give it to your friends, and then they can join the game too. So you come in here, you enter a code. And then after that, you're going to kind of log into the system. And we're going to keep everything sort of anonymous in a sense that you just pick an emoji and a name, and that's who you get to be. And then after that, you and your friends get to pick a mini game that you wanna play. So I've just done 2 to begin with. I've done a rocket launch and like a sharks with lasers, because why not? These game ideas have come from the mind of my 4-year-old, and so whatever random game idea he's come up with, I can just throw together, and then we can make it a mini game that someone has to program. So many more interesting ideas to come on mini games. Once everyone agrees on a mini game, then you have to gather your requirements. And so here you get to see sort of a preview of the game potentially, and then you get to read about what you need to do. So in the case of a rocket launch, you have a goal, you need to launch the rocket, you need to mix the fuel, the hydrogen and oxygen, you have to do a countdown from 10 to 0, you have to light the engines, etc. So you'll be given the prompt of where you have to, discuss with your friends the things you have to do. Then you actually have to pick what you want to do. So down here, you'll say, okay, I've got 4 players, and I've got 4 tasks that have to be done, and you can imagine these might be pointed tasks, so it'll be a really hard one versus an easy one. Maybe one's just writing a simple if condition, and maybe a harder one is, writing, maybe it's 8 lines of code, something like that. And so to assign it to yourself, it's kind of like a Trello board. You'll actually drag and drop the item from the left to the right and say, I'm going to do this one. And in this way, if you have less than 4 people, you might say, I'm going to do both of these, for example. So everyone picks the tasks that they want to do. And then it's time to code your actual thing. And so we'll offer help for you to say, like, here's what you could do to write this code. Remember, you have to have these are the parameters you're given, and then this is your return statement. But you have to write the code, and you have to write the test, and you have to write a sentence about what your solution was. And the reason you have to do that is because documentation is incredibly important to writing code, especially if your friends are going to be reading your code in the next step. But I just wanted to show that, we're going to help walk the user through, coding their actual thing. And one of my long-term goals of this is to actually create a brand new programming language, which will teach kids. Oh, sorry, which will be a kid-friendly programming language. So you don't have to know JavaScript, for example, to write this. I think learning the actual language is good, but if I want to start with a younger demographic, let's say like 8 years old, then I don't think I need to have the syntax trouble of JavaScript. They should just be able to sort of use English to be able to write this. But that's going to come later. We'll get it working, and then we'll make a cool programming language to help them do it better. After that, then you'll have to get one approval for your work, right? So like the real world, you have to sort of put a pull request in. We'll make it more fun than that, and then you have to do a code review where your friends can comment on it to see, what didn't work, what did work. Like, oh, this is supposed to be a mix of 50 and 60, not 50, for example. And so you'll get approvals on your work, and then it'll be time to actually, for real, run the code together. And the code runner will run all 4 pieces of code. And then we'll see if you were successful or not. And if you weren't, then you have to go back and fix your bugs and do the whole thing over again, just like the real world when you're trying to do something. Okay, so this is just the general prototype of the game. I want to jump into a quick demo of what I've got so far, with the disclaimer that this has not gone through a design period. This is just sort of me playing with the idea, prototyping, and seeing if it's working. And then after that, I want to show you what the roadmap for this project looks like and what future builds are going to have. So hopping over to the demo, this is going to look a lot like those prototype wireframes that I showed you. But here we've got the game code enter screen. So here's where if you have a code, you'll enter it. And then if you don't have a code, you can create a new game. This is just front-end code. It doesn't actually work yet, so we can just move on. This is important, so if you want to just be somebody else, Anakin, and then pick, a whale or a robot, let's say. Robot makes a little more sense if I'm Anakin. And so then I can say start. And now I'm given my mini game select screen. Now you can imagine in real time, if there was 4 players, that you would get to see all 4 players' cursors on the screen, labeled who they are. And then in order to do one, my plan is yet all 4 players have to click and hold on one of these icons. And that'll be a really fun little technique. But for now, you can just click it. After that, these are the 4 tasks you have to do for a rocket launch. You have to do a countdown, move the launch tower, mix the fuel, and launch at 0. And these point values kind of tell you how hard those things are. Maybe your team has a new player, etc. And so let's say we're going to do the countdown. I drag it and drop it, and it turns green and assigns it to myself. And I can always drag it back over and put it back down. And I can sort of move these around. I had fun building this whole thing, and so I plan to do a whole devlog on just showing how I built this particular thing, because it was kind of fun to do. But let's say I've assigned this to myself, and I'm going to say, let's play. And so now we're on the code screen. And on the code screen, I get to write what I want to have happen in the game. That's going to be the next screen. And so this is for me to write this one. So it's going to tell me what my goal is, that I'm supposed to write a function that counts down from 10 to 0, that my function will be called every 1 second. That's very important to know. Otherwise, I might try to write a for loop that counts down, but then I shouldn't do that if it's called every second. So that's one little intricate detail. Some pieces of code will be every second, and some will be before the game starts, or some will be fired off an event. So there will be different places when the code will be running, and we'll have to do a good job explaining that to the user. It also explains what parameters you're given and what you should be returning. But here you can write your code, and then here you can write your test. In this case, I've actually sort of pre-written the tests here, where, if the value is 0, then we expect it to still be 0 on the next tick, because it shouldn't go past 0. And then it should just generally go down by 1 on most cases, so 10 to 9. And then here's the documentation. So here's where you would write about your solution. It says, I decided to subtract 2 at a time to make it go faster, right? Maybe someone's going to try to do that. So let's do that. We're going to say, I'm just going to return this minus 2 because I'm going to try to beat the system. So I'm going to run the code. And now I'm on the game launch screen, which is similar to the one that sort of told me about what the game needed to be. And so here I'm ready to launch. So I'm just going to hit launch, and you can see the countdown is going down by 2 every time. Like, look at it go. Oh no, it's going past 0. So we obviously have a bug, and we need to fix that bug. So we can go back and we can say, okay, well, how about if the current clock value is if it's less than or equal to 0, we don't want to do anything. So we can just return 0, like let's call it a day there. And again, we'll try to help the kid out on having to write these things. But if I run that code and I launch it, okay, we're counting by 2, we're going fast, and okay, we're not going past 0, but nothing's happening. And if I read the prompt, I would know that the launch tower has to move out of the way, which is someone else's task. So we're not good until someone else wrote that. But let's assume that happens and they've done that. So I'm going to go back down to going by 1 at a time, and that's because the person who wrote the launch tower one, their job is to make it go on 3, and I never hit 3. So working together. So now I've done that, and let's say I sort of screw this up, right? I'm gonna make a mistake here, and I'm gonna launch, and then I've got a bug in the function countdown. It's not defined. Shoot, I need to fix that bug. I meant to write 1, not ASDF. Okay, so now I can run the code, and I can hit launch, and then we're gonna 9, 8, 7, 6. Oh, the anticipation. 5, 4, 3. Oh, there goes the launch tower. 2, we're clear. 1, and there goes our rocket. You can see our fuel's getting used. There goes our rocket, and oh no, it didn't get far enough. And so we've got another bug about enough mix of hydrogen and oxygen, and we can kind of figure out what's wrong there. But that ended the demo. So that's just the first game. I do have another game that I worked on already, which is Sharks with Lasers, which it's not totally wired up at this point. But here's a ship shooting sharks. Doesn't exactly look like lasers, but my son really liked it, so whatever. So at any rate, you can kind of get an idea of what this game could be. There's a lot more work to do, so I want to talk about what the roadmap looks like. So here's the roadmap. There's a lot to do on this. This is a very ambitious project, but I'm looking forward to it. So we've got the join page, the login page, the game screen. We've talked about that. We've talked about the rocket and shark minigame. I plan to make a third minigame as well. We've done the task selection screen, the code screen. But we need to wire up a backend for all this. And so my plan is to use Firebase for the real-time capabilities and for the database storage. And so we need to wire that all up. I haven't done the code review screen yet. The mini games I've written with a game engine called Phaser.js, but it's not. I've not optimized or abstracted anything there. So I've got a lot of repeat code, just trying to figure out how it all works because I was learning Phaser. So we need to make making the games easier. They're not very hard to make, but they should be able to abstract certain amounts of things. We need to add like win conditions, so like when you've succeeded, like big thumbs up. And then we need to wire in Firebase to the lobby, the creating the game, wire up the backend for all the different pieces. We also want each game to have 4 levels of hardness, so that way maybe the first set of tasks are 1 points, 2 points, 3 points kind of things. But then maybe by level 4, everything is a 5-point ticket. And I know, if you know software engineering, you're like, oh, 5, that's 8 point. It's not. You're not supposed to equate. It's supposed to be complexity. So we'll keep it as complexity in this case. And the levels of the difficulty of the tickets will increase as you get there, as the game is harder and harder to do. And the game might actually change. It might be a little bit more. Maybe there's 2 rockets in level 4. I don't know. I haven't thought that far ahead. After that, we'll add more games. We'll add the kid-friendly programming language, and then we have to make the thing public so other people can use it. And then I wanted to add like awards and charts and paths to be able to make it sort of a little more addictive to continue to play. Those features can be removed if not required, but the plan is to target an age group that I think is really ready to learn, but could use this sort of team mentality when it comes to software engineering. So that's the goal. That's the idea. I'll be making devlogs about the build of this to go dive deep into how each of these things are built, because it's very interesting to me to learn, and I'm interested to show you guys about how each of these things, like the real-time capabilities, setting up Firebase, how to actually do the drag and drop and all the event stuff, and Phaser. So I'm interested to show how all that works. So we'll be making a series of vlogs about all of that. Until then, That's the project. Hope you guys like it. Please let me know what you think and if you have any ideas. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.